Did you know that globalists from all over the world are getting together every year for a world government summit? If you're like most Americans, you probably had no idea. And that's because the media is not reporting it, even though the media is all there. So, for 7 years now, the dictatorship ruling the United Arab Emirates has been inviting leading globalists, thousands of them from all over the world, to come join for this super creepy World Government Summit. So they get together once per year on the Arabian Peninsula and blabber about, as you might expect from the name, world government. And they are deadly serious. Not just globalists show up at these things. You also get communists who come from China, from other communist places. You get Islamists, right? It's basically everybody is invited except conservative Christian Americans. And it is a very, very strange confab. I mean, if you just listen to the public speeches they make, and there are lots of them, they're openly pushing globalism. They're openly pushing this agenda for a world government. They're promoting technocracy, right? They want rule by experts and rule by themselves, and they really are plotting the future of what they themselves often refer to as the New World Order. George H.W. Bush first described that really publicly, for the American public at least, back in 1991. He said it would be an order in which a credible United Nations would use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and the vision of the UN's founders.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
And, of course, Bill Clinton agrees.
After 1989, President Bush said, and it's a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order.
Joe Biden agrees.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order.
At this World Government Summit, it seems like what they're doing is just figuring out, how do we advance this new world order forward? How do we move the process along? And so what happens is you literally get, like, the entire leadership of the United Nations shows up at these things. You get the leadership of the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, from the European Union, Communist China, leading central bankers, even from the people from the Trump administration showed up in 2019. And they mingle with, totalitarians of different types, mass murderers, Islamic dictators, communist leaders, things like that. And really, a lot of Islamists come because it's in the Islamic world. In 2019, they had a surprise guest. Pope Francis showed up, and he had met with the leading Sunni Islam leader not too long before, and they agreed that they're worshiping the same God, and they're going to enter into the Ark of Fraternity together. A lot of Catholic theologians condemned that rhetoric. In fact, they said it sounded Masonic, which of course the Catholic Church has historically not allowed members to become members of the Freemasonic fraternity, but Pope Francis really came under a lot of fire for this, but shortly after he went to the World Government Summit, and you really didn't hear about this in the news again, but he said some things that were very interesting. He talked about, for example, offering the best wishes for the work of the attendees, a lot of Marxist-type rhetoric. He said, there's all these problems in the global village, and now we need cooperation and environmentalism to deal with these alleged problems. He said we needed to put, people in the environment ahead of capital and economic interests. So, very colorful language from the leader of the Catholic Church, blessing this very, very bizarre summit. And, it's especially bizarre when you think about what happened in 2017. A lot of people don't realize that in 2017, you actually had the erection of an Arch of Baal at this thing. And this is pretty crazy stuff. And I recognize, normal people think, what in the world? Well, Baal, of course, was a demonic idol referenced very often in the Bible. Associated with child sacrifice, associated with sexual debauchery, with pantheism, heathenism, worship of the creation rather than the creator. And so there was this giant arch in front of the temple of Baal in a city called Palmyra in Syria, and they built a giant replica of it. And the first place they put it up was at the World Government Summit, right? Really weird stuff. It reminds me of the Bohemian Grove, where they get together in front of this giant 40-foot stone owl. You can see the episode we did on Behind the Deep State, where we talked about the Bohemian Grove. You can see a clip of that radio host Alex Jones snuck in there and got. So very weird stuff, very occult things going on here. The people who show up at these things and the speeches they give are really quite remarkable. At the 2019 one, for example, you had Harrison Ford showed up, and I mean, the guy sounded like, I don't know, the leader of a doomsday cult or something. He's blabbering about how he is nature, and he pretended to be the ocean and speak for the ocean and the trees. And he said, "Oh, well, one time I covered the whole earth." And I don't know if he was thinking he was talking about the time of Noah's flood, or what other time, maybe before creation, before God made the dry land come out. I don't know what exactly he was thinking, but he was suggesting that basically humans are irrelevant. He used some profanities. I don't care if humans are here. Only Mother Earth matters. But very, very strange to see globalists and pantheists and occultists and Islamists all hobnobbing together. You had a senior official of the United Nations threatening there was going to be these horrible consequences for billions of people if we didn't submit to the UN agenda. And that was really the theme of the 2019 World Government Summit, was this Agenda 2030. We're going to be doing a whole episode on Agenda 2030 very soon, so stay tuned for that, a whole episode of Behind the Deep State. And Agenda 2030, really the simplest way to understand it is just a roadmap to totalitarianism, right? Developed in partnership with the Communist Chinese government and all these globalists. Every government in the world signed on. Pope Francis loved it. I want to give you just a sense of who goes to these types of meetings. In the 2019 one, and this is very typical of what you've had every year, this is now an annual event, you had people like the head of the IMF, Christine Lagarde, who said, the IMF should probably think about going to move to China, communist China, one of these days. Total globalist, been in trouble for different scandals, corruption, things like that. Then you had the head of the UN World Intellectual Property Organization, a guy called Francis Gurry, who's been involved in retaliating against whistleblowers, vote buying, sending dual-use technology to the regimes in North Korea and Iran, stealing DNA from his subordinates to find out who wrote a letter about him that he wasn't pleased with. I mean, really, really crazy stuff. You had the head of UNESCO, the UN's Global Education Department, right? The UN Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, socialist from France. And I mean, people who read the New American regularly know what these people are up to. It's sick stuff, right? They're promoting global standards for sex education. They're promoting perversion. They want to teach 5-year-olds about unspeakable things. Then you had the head of the UN Development Program, a guy called Achim Steiner, total globalist, anti-human zealot. You had the head of UNICEF, the UN, one of the UN's children agencies that's been involved in, distributing vaccines that have been sterilizing people. You had the head of the UN General Assembly, Maria Espinosa. You had the head of the World Food Program, David Beasley. You had this totalitarian weirdo, Jeffrey Sachs, the guy who helped bring about the Sustainable Development Goals, Agenda 2030. He's been advising pretty much every Marxist and radical that you can think of. He also advised Chinese communists, totalitarian, as I mentioned. You had the head of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, right? This self-proclaimed citizen of the world who brings together all these globalists in Davos, Switzerland every year. You had presidents, prime ministers, right? The president of Rwanda came and talked about how the African Union needed to usurp more power from the peoples of Africa. You had the prime minister of Pakistan demanding more wealth redistribution. You had even people from the Trump administration showed up. You actually had U.S. Energy Secretary Rick Perry, who has been to Bilderberg. He announced that there was going to be like some kind of robotics competition. You had the deputy administrator of FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. You had the former head of the EPA there, Lisa Jackson, involved in all sorts of scandals while bullying and trying to destroy private property throughout the Obama administration. And yet, all of this going on, world leaders, American leaders, all these people coming together to celebrate globalism, and almost not a peep in the American media. Most Americans never heard of them, about any of this. Why is that? And, what's really interesting about this is that It's not because the media didn't know about it. It's not because the media wasn't there. In fact, this event was actually sponsored by the New York Times, the Financial Times, CNBC, the ultimate in fake news, the CNN, right, the Clinton News Network or the Communist News Network, as our president calls them. You are very fake news, right? So CNN sponsored it, but of course they didn't talk much about it in America. Even Sky News sponsored it, which is owned by the same company that owns Fox News. All of these fake media outlets are in bed together. They're all members of, the Council on Foreign Relations. Their leaders go to Bilderberg. Their leaders go to World Government Summit and all these sorts of things. So really corrupt. And, why are world leaders getting together under an Arch of Baal replica? Why are they getting together to talk about globalism? And why isn't the media talking about this stuff? This is what we mean when we talk about a deep state. These people like to hide in the shadows, right? Why would they want to hide in the shadows? Well, because what they're doing is evil. Right? If what they were doing was good, they would be proudly telling us about it. They would be trumpeting it. CNN would be playing it on endless loop. So what's going on here is very dark. These people truly do intend to set up a world government. That's one of the key agendas of the deep state. And there's so much here to analyze. I wish we had more time. Why are Islamists and communists cooperating together? Why is the Pope involved in this? What is going on here? And why aren't they consulting the people of America if we're okay with all this? We're the ones paying for it all, right? We're the ones who are losing our sovereignty, losing our freedom. It's time to put a stop to all this. And one of the ways that you can help do that is expose all of this. So make sure you like this video, share it, comment below, and please help us get the word out. It's not okay to have all these globalists meeting together for their little world government summit and engaging in occult practices and blabbering about the need for globalism. It's just not okay, especially when we finance it with our tax dollars and it's being kept secret from us. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Alex Newman, your host here on Behind the Deep State. I hope you'll stay tuned. We'll be back with another episode next week. Go back and watch the episodes we did before. So much to talk about. Thanks again for tuning in. God bless you all, and signing out.